Title: Inside San Quentin, the reality of California's most notorious prison. Help this channel grow. Like the video, leave a comment, subscribe, and don't forget to turn on your notifications for our next real-life prison stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. The story begins. San Quentin State Prison, Marin County, California. Overlooking the San Francisco Bay. Built in 1852. California's oldest prison. Also California's only death row for male inmates. Over 3,700 inmates. 700 on death row alone. The largest death row population in the Western Hemisphere. But here's what makes San Quentin different from every other maximum security prison in America: it's not just death row. It's rehabilitation programs so successful that former San Quentin inmates return as staff. It's college courses taught by university professors. It's a prison that executes people and simultaneously helps others earn bachelor's degrees. Both happening in the same facility. San Quentin houses some of California's most violent criminals. Serial killers on death row. Gang leaders serving life without parole. Yet it also runs programs national experts call the gold standard of prison reform. Inmates produce an award-winning newspaper. They host a podcast that's been downloaded millions of times. They participate in restorative justice programs where they meet victims' families face to face. How does one prison contain both California's death chamber and its most progressive rehabilitation programs? How does the same institution prepare some inmates for execution while preparing others for successful reentry into society? This is San Quentin, where death row and redemption exist side by side. Where California's harshest punishment meets its most hopeful reform efforts. This is the reality most people never see. The facility, death row and daily operations. San Quentin sits on 432 acres of waterfront property in Marin County, directly across from San Francisco. On clear days, inmates can see the Golden Gate Bridge from certain cell windows. Real estate analysts estimate the land value at multiple billions of dollars. Some of California's most expensive real estate used to house over 3,700 of its most serious offenders. The irony isn't lost on anyone. San Quentin sits in one of America's wealthiest counties, overlooking some of its most beautiful scenery, holding some of its most troubled lives. The facility opened in 1852, making it California's oldest prison. The original cell blocks, still in use today, were built by inmates themselves using locally quarried stone. Some cell blocks date to the 1870s. According to California Department of Corrections documentation, parts of San Quentin predate indoor plumbing. Modern renovations have occurred, but the architecture reflects its age. Cell blocks that once held Gold Rush-era criminals now hold 21st-century offenders. Walking through certain sections feels like walking through a museum of American incarceration history, except the exhibits are still occupied. San Quentin's most defining feature is its death row, officially called the Adjustment Center and East Block Condemned Units. California's death row for male inmates. All of them. 700 condemned men housed at San Quentin. According to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, this represents the largest death row population in the Western Hemisphere. More condemned inmates than entire countries have in their entire prison systems. They live in cells approximately 4 feet by 9 feet. 48 square feet. Smaller than a parking space. Some have lived there for decades. California hasn't executed anyone since 2006, over 18 years due to legal challenges and a gubernatorial moratorium. But the death row population continues growing as courts hand down new death sentences faster than legal processes resolve existing cases. The death row experience at San Quentin is unique even among death rows. According to Department of Corrections policies, condemned inmates have different schedules, restrictions, and privileges than general population. Most spend 22 to 23 hours per day in their cells. 1 hour of exercise in small concrete yards. Meals delivered to cells through slots. Limited contact with other inmates. Legal visits happen behind glass. Family visits behind glass. Decades pass in 4 by 9 foot spaces waiting for executions that may never come due to California's de facto moratorium. But San Quentin isn't only death row. The general population, approximately 3,000 inmates not on death row, lives in different conditions in different cell blocks. These are serving sentences ranging from a few years to life without parole. According to classification documents, San Quentin houses every security level except minimum, Level 2 medium security, Level 3 close security, and Level 4 maximum security all in the same facility. This mixing of security levels is unusual. Most prisons segregate by security classification. San Quentin's history and limited space in California's overcrowded prison system mean it holds everyone together. The physical infrastructure reflects decades of use and insufficient funding. According to legislative oversight reports and news investigations, San Quentin struggles with deteriorating plumbing, inadequate ventilation, and maintenance backlogs. The oldest cell blocks lack climate control. Summer temperatures inside concrete and steel buildings can exceed 100 degrees. Winter brings cold that old heating systems struggle to address. Health inspectors have documented pest problems, mold, and sanitation issues in older sections. These aren't just complaints, they're documented in official state reports and legal filings. California's legislature has debated closing San Quentin multiple times due to infrastructure costs, but the death row component complicates closure plans. Where would 700 death row inmates go? Building another death row facility would cost billions. So San Quentin persists, aging infrastructure and all, because California hasn't found an alternative. This is the facility, historic, iconic, deteriorating, holding California's death row and thousands of other lives in outdated buildings on invaluable land overlooking the San Francisco Bay. Physical infrastructure forms the foundation for everything that happens inside. Understanding San Quentin requires understanding this context first. The programs, from death row to college degrees. San Quentin runs rehabilitation programs that criminal justice experts internationally study as models of what's possible inside maximum security prisons. This seems contradictory, California's harshest facility running its most progressive programs, but that contradiction defines San Quentin. While death row inmates await execution one building over, general population inmates earn college degrees, produce media, and participate in programs designed not for punishment but transformation. The San Quentin Rehabilitation Center, established within the prison, offers educational programming that would be impressive at any community college. According to program documentation and participant data, inmates can take courses leading to associate and bachelor's degrees through partnerships with Patton University and Mount Tamalpais College. Not remedial classes, actual college courses taught by credentialed professors who commute into the prison. Inmates sit for the same exams, write the same papers, and earn the same accredited degrees as students outside. As of recent reporting, over 100 inmates have completed college degrees at San Quentin, with hundreds more enrolled in coursework. The recidivism rates for program graduates are dramatically lower than general prison population averages, single-digit percentages versus California's overall rate around 50%. The programs extend far beyond academics. San Quentin houses the Last Mile Coding program, teaching inmates computer programming and web development. Graduates have received job offers from Silicon Valley companies upon release. The Code .7370 program trains inmates in audio and video production, skills immediately marketable in California's media industries. According to program tracking, employment rates for participants post-release exceed 90%. The economic argument is compelling. Investing in education and job training costs less than reincarceration and turns former inmates into taxpayers rather than burdens on the system. San Quentin's media programs have gained national attention. Ear Hustle, a podcast produced inside San Quentin by inmates and outside producers, has been downloaded tens of millions of times and won numerous awards including recognition from Radiotopia and the Pulitzer Prize Board. The podcast features inmates telling their own stories, life before prison, experiences inside, reflections on crime and consequence, hopes for the future. It humanizes people the public typically views only through crime statistics and mugshots. The San Quentin News, the prison newspaper written and produced by inmates, has won journalism awards and covers both prison issues and outside news, maintaining connections between inmates and the wider world they've been separated from. Perhaps most controversial are the restorative justice programs. According to program documentation, these bring together inmates who've committed violent crimes with victims' family members, not their own victims' families, but others affected by similar crimes. The meetings are facilitated by trained professionals. Inmates hear directly from people whose lives were shattered by violence like what they committed. Victims' family members meet the human beings behind the crime statistics. The psychological research on restorative justice shows it reduces recidivism for offenders and provides healing opportunities for victims' families. But it's difficult work. Watching someone whose son was murdered speak to someone serving life for murdering someone else's son is emotionally overwhelming for everyone involved. Yet participants report the programs changed them fundamentally. Both inmates and family members describe the experience as the beginning of genuine healing. Critics ask legitimate questions. Why do California's worst criminals get free college education when law-abiding citizens struggle with student debt? Why invest in programs for people serving life sentences who may never be released? The responses from corrections officials and program advocates emphasize practicality rather than philosophy. First, most inmates eventually release. Even at San Quentin, the majority will return to communities someday. Releasing them with education and job skills makes communities safer and reduces costs. Second, programs improve prison safety. Inmates engaged in education and programs cause fewer disciplinary problems, reducing violence and making facilities safer for both staff and inmates. Third, the programs actually cost relatively little. Partnerships with universities and nonprofits provide much of the funding and labor. The cost-benefit analysis, according to California Corrections budget analyses, strongly favors programming. San Quentin demonstrates something California's corrections system struggles to articulate coherently. Punishment and rehabilitation aren't opposites that can't coexist. Inmates can be held accountable through incarceration while simultaneously being prepared for eventual reintegration. Death row's existence doesn't preclude general population reform programs. The same institution can contain both California's harshest realities and its most hopeful possibilities. Whether this makes San Quentin an inspiring model or a confused contradiction depends on perspective. The debates, execution, closure, and transformation. San Quentin sits at the center of California's death penalty debate. 700 condemned men on death row. 18 years since the last execution. A death chamber maintained but unused. California voters have twice rejected ballot measures to abolish the death penalty, in 2012 and again in 2016, yet Governor Gavin Newsom imposed a moratorium in 2019, halting all executions and ordering the death chamber dismantled. The result: San Quentin maintains the nation's largest death row for a punishment California isn't administering and may never administer again, creating legal, financial, and ethical complications that remain unresolved. The death penalty debate at San Quentin involves more than abstract philosophy about state execution. It involves 700 specific human beings living in 4-by-9-foot cells for decades. According to California death row data, the average condemned inmate has been on death row for over 20 years. Some have been there 30, even 40 years. Many are now elderly, suffering age-related health problems while confined in cells designed for temporary maximum security housing, not long-term geriatric care. Medical costs for aging death row inmates run into millions of dollars annually per state budget documents. They're dying of natural causes faster than legal appeals conclude. California's death row experiences more deaths from old age and illness than it would from execution even if executions resumed. The legal reality makes death penalty continuation questionable on practical grounds regardless of moral positions. According to judicial analyses and legal cost studies, California spends over $150 million annually on death penalty-related costs, special housing, heightened security, lengthy automatic appeals, additional court proceedings. If all 700 death row inmates had their sentences commuted to life without parole, the alternative sentence California law provides, the state would save tens of millions annually while achieving the same practical outcome, these individuals never returning to society. They'd move from death row cells to general population life without parole housing, reducing the special security and legal costs but maintaining permanent incarceration. Every comprehensive cost analysis reaches the same conclusion: California's death penalty is extraordinarily expensive for punishment it's not administering. Beyond death penalty debates, San Quentin itself faces closure questions. California's Little Hoover Commission, a state oversight agency, has repeatedly recommended closing San Quentin due to deteriorating infrastructure, maintenance costs, and valuable land that could be repurposed or sold. According to commission reports and legislative analyses, closing San Quentin could save hundreds of millions in deferred maintenance while generating billions from land sale or development. The waterfront property in Marin County is among California's most valuable real estate. Proposals have suggested replacing San Quentin with smaller, modern facilities farther from expensive urban areas where land costs less and new construction could incorporate current corrections design standards rather than retrofitting 19th-century buildings. But closure faces enormous obstacles. First, death row. Where do 700 condemned inmates go? Building another death row facility would cost billions and face intense political opposition from any community where it might be located. No California county wants to host a new death row. Second, the rehabilitation programs. San Quentin's programs depend partly on proximity to the Bay Area's universities, tech companies, and nonprofit organizations that provide education, training, and volunteers. Moving the prison to a remote rural location, where land is cheaper and opposition might be less, would severely damage program partnerships that require regular outside access. Third, inmate legal access. San Quentin's location near San Francisco courts facilitates attorney visits and legal proceedings. Remote relocation complicates legal representation, raising constitutional access to courts concerns. California appears stuck. Maintaining San Quentin costs enormous amounts in deferred maintenance and operational expenses. Closing it seems financially appealing but practically impossible without resolving death penalty status and risking program destruction that's working. The state has essentially chosen expensive inaction, continuing to operate an aging, costly facility because every alternative involves political, legal, or financial complications that seem insurmountable. Recent developments suggest potential transformation rather than closure. Governor Newsom has proposed converting San Quentin into a rehabilitation-focused facility, moving death row elsewhere or commuting all death sentences, then transforming the entire prison into an expanded version of the current rehab programs. This vision would make San Quentin a Scandinavian-style institution emphasizing education, therapy, and preparation for release rather than pure incarceration. Critics call this politically impossible without voted death penalty abolition. Supporters argue California already isn't executing anyone, so death row is symbolism, not reality, and maintaining expensive symbolism while rehabilitation programs prove successful is irrational policy. San Quentin embodies California's contradictions on criminal justice, simultaneously progressive and punitive, reformist and retributive, hopeful about rehabilitation while maintaining the nation's largest death row. These aren't resolvable contradictions, they're the tensions California society contains. San Quentin is the physical manifestation of a state that can't decide whether prisons exist primarily to punish or primarily to prepare people for return to society. So it does both, awkwardly, expensively, in a deteriorating facility on waterfront property worth billions, home to death row and college classes alike.